Second oral question, Lord Young of Cookham.
My Lords, I beg leave to ask the question standing in my name on the order paper.
Delivering new homes and regenerating left-behind communities are central to our Levelling Up mission, and we remain committed to our ambition of delivering 300,000 homes a year. We've made progress with more than 2 million additional homes being delivered since April 2010, and over 242,000 homes were delivered from April 2019 to March 2020, the highest level for over 30 years.
I'm grateful to my noble friend. The Construction Industry Training Board has forecast that we need an additional 266,000 construction workers over the next 3 years if demand is to be met. And that's in an industry already facing shortages. So what action can my noble friend take to see that those numbers are met? And if there is to be a shortfall in output, can he ensure that that does not fall on the affordable sector of the market?
Well, my noble friend is right that there has been a recent report by the CITB, but I point out that that shortfall is for the whole of the construction industry, not just housing, and we have significant cross-government intervention and investment in skills, and the CITB made 110 million available in training grants to support 14,000 businesses, and we continue to recognise, though, that there will be, and this is picked up by the Federation of Master Builders, there are stresses and strains, both in terms of labour but also in materials that the government's working hard to overcome.
Dressed as Chair of the National Housing Federation, which estimates that we need 90,000 social homes a year in England, can the Minister tell us how the government will ensure that its reforms in the planning system contained in the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill will help to deliver that much-needed social housing?
Well, my Lords, there is a real commitment to build more social housing, including more affordable housing. The programme, as the Noble Baroness knows, is some 11.5 billion, with a target of doubling the amount of social rented homes in this particular grant period than in the previous one. And the Levelling Up Regeneration Bill recognises that in order to get the housing, we need the infrastructure in place and also to ensure that the neighbourhoods that have mixed communities are right at its heart, and that's what the bill is planning to do.
All the new houses will be built with a high level of insulation, the quality of which is properly inspected, and will not be fitted with gas boilers but will be heated by renewable energy.
My Lords, we recognise that in order to meet our net zero commitment, we do need to implement the Future Home Standards, which comes in, I believe, in 2025. And, of course, building regulations will reflect that ambition to ensure that we not only build more homes, but we build more sustainable homes that use heat pumps and other devices that meet that target.
My Lord, I registered interest as a member of the Development Corporation Board, and my noble friend, would my noble friend agree there are many public bodies that would be willing to get on delivering homes if they had access to the Brownfield Infrastructure Land Fund? Nearly 3 months into the financial year, is my noble friend able to say when the allocations from that fund are going to be announced?
Sorry. My Lords, I'd point out to my noble friend that 550 million has been allocated to 7 mayoral combined authorities, but we do recognise that we do need to announce the availability of funding for smaller brownfield sites, and that will happen very shortly.
The Noble Lord the Minister will know that half of all of the affordable housing that is produced annually within the 300,000 target, half of it comes from the planning obligations on the house builders. Can he reassure the House that the planning reforms in the Levelling Up Bill will not diminish the amount of affordable housing which the house builders have to produce, since we need to double the output of affordable housing and not halve it?
I can give the assurance that the Levelling Up Regeneration Bill recognises the role of building more housing and including more affordable housing, and what we're trying to do is ensure that there's a more transparent approach with regard to the levy, and there's a reform around the current community infrastructure levy to get that right, to make sure that we do get a proper contribution to affordable housing in the coming years.
My Lords, has there been a detailed assessment of the decision by Mrs Thatcher to sell off council houses 40 years ago in the light of chronic shortage of houses for sale and for rent at affordable prices? And is the government positively encouraging local authorities to increase their public housing stock?
My Lords, we can prima facie assess that 2 million people chose to buy their own council home and are now homeowners as a result of that, and that's something that we make no apology for. But what we want to make sure is that in spreading the ability for housing association tenants to buy their own homes, that we design the scheme in a way that enables the homes sold to be replaced on a one-for-one basis. I think that's something that everyone can get behind.
Can my noble friend confirm that an unbelievable 1 million people were given the right to come and settle in this country last year? Even if we assume that 300,000 return or emigrate, can he confirm that the remainder, even if they occupy the houses at twice the density of the indigenous population, will use up half the houses we build every year?
My Lords, I recognise that this has been a very welcoming country. We've welcomed refugees from Afghanistan, and there's a very successful programme. We've welcomed British Hong Kongers to this country and make no apologies for that. And we do recognise that there is a need to hit our new build housing targets, and that those are going to be homes for people that have come to this country for a better life, but also we need homes for the younger generations as well.
Lords, the House Building Index that's produced by the Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply found that last month residential construction had slowed down to levels last seen during the first COVID lockdown. Can I ask the Noble Lord the Minister what assessment he's made of the impact this will have on house prices and private rents?
Well, I don't recognise the cataclysmic drop since the pandemic. We did hit a record number, as I pointed out, in 2020-21. There was a slight falling back, but all our internal assessments are that we will see a rebound, and that this dip this year is not something that will be pronounced or continue into the mid-decades. It's a stretching target to hit 300,000, but we're going to see increasing numbers in the years to come.
Bishop.
That's happened for the first time. My Lords, thank you for... just to ask a question of my Lord the Minister, is it possible for a developer to pay the local authority a certain sum of money to be relieved of their responsibility, and for that local authority then to use the money elsewhere? I hear that is happening in other parts of the country.
My Lords, I don't recognise that you can discharge your responsibility. That's almost describing a bung. I don't think that's what happens. What you can do is, if there's an affordable housing requirement, you can choose to discharge that off-site, but you still have that requirement and to deliver that. And you see that in some areas where there's very high-value housing, and it's simply more economic to build that elsewhere. But I don't recognise that, but if you have specific examples, I'm happy to look into that.
My Lord, is it not time that we had a meaningful...
It is said... Thank you. It is said that pressure on housing supply is often at the expense of regional and national economic development, and the government departments work on their own strategies in silos to the detriment of the broader strategies. Could the Minister give assurance that this is not the case, and will take up the cause if evidence is presented to the contrary?
Well, I do recognise that you can't look at housing in isolation, that we do need to get investment in the infrastructures and other factors in order to allow for growth. But it's a good start to have a $10 billion investment in housing supply since the start of this Parliament, but also there's an investment to enable the brownfield sites to be built out rather than sometimes the easier greenfield sites. We want to see brownfield development, and that does require infrastructure, and the money is in place to do precisely that.
Is it not time we had a meaningful new towns project which would benefit both owner occupation and social housing throughout the United Kingdom?
Well, I do think we need to find ways of coming up with new town projects, but to do that we do need the infrastructure, we do need the transport, we do need the roads, we do need the rail, and that's why we recognise that a programme just to build homes is not enough. We need to get that in the round, and that's something that we're taking forward as part of the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill in this session.
My Lords, I was very pleased to hear the Noble Lord the Minister say last night enthusiastically that we need more affordable housing and social housing, and that the government was happy to look at ideas. There are currently 500 projects for community land trust homes, creating 7,000 new homes around the country. Will the government look at trying to ensure that this method of providing homes in perpetuity of a structure and type decided by local communities for local communities, will the government look at how it can encourage this model further?
Yeah, no, I think there's quite a degree of interest in how community land trusts can operate, and we're happy to look at Coin Street as an example, and there are other examples, I believe, in Watford, and we're happy to take all ideas, including how we can use community land trusts as a vehicle to deliver more affordable housing.